Hi, this is Claudia Filos with the Center for Atlantic Studies, and I'm so delighted to be joined here today by Gregory and Nagy. And our goal today is to talk about some questions that you have posed, Greg, for our community. And we want to talk about the responses and the questions that have come up.
There's so many of them, and it's hard to keep track of all of them because there are quite a variety of answers, and I had a lot of delight in thinking about some of the problems and some of the solutions that you came up with.
Right. So just to let everyone know, we've already gone over all the responses together, and so this is our opportunity to just have a kind of an informal dialogue, weaving in the comments and the questions and concerns of the community, as well as their ideas, which some are really, really fun. So let's get to your question, okay, Greg? I'm just going to repeat it.
Please.
So you said in Iliad 1, are we to assume that Agamemnon is a quote-unquote bad character? Can we find in this case any sign of good as well as bad characteristics? So can you just start us off, Greg, with thinking about why you selected this as a question and why you put bad character in quotes?
Well, I put it in quotes, and some of you picked up on that because their value system is probably different from ours, and so we can't assume that what's bad for us will be bad for them and vice versa. That said, I do think there are lots of situations where the master narrator, as I like to call the personality that tells the story, call him Homer or call him the poet with a capital P, but where the master narrator specifically says that this was bad or this was pretty good. So in other words, it's not our criteria of bad and good, but their criteria. And that's what I was trying to tease out, but right. I thought it would be clever just to put it in quotation marks. And some of you picked up on that, and I'm very grateful.
And just to clarify, so when you say there, you're talking about, let's say, ancient Greeks of, I don't know, maybe the 5th century, BCE, who are...
Well, okay. Yes, the one thing that we have to be careful about is that this medium is an evolving medium.
Right.
So there may be realities that are referred to even within the space of one short line that may be as many as 1,000 years apart from each other. So the reality of what is sometimes called Homeric society is simply in the way the whole epic of the Iliad hangs together. It's not necessarily a cross-section of Greek-speaking world, I don't know, early 5th century or late 6th century BCE. It's not that. Sure, it tends to gravitate towards those eras, but as I say, there can be big differences. So it's more like what the system, as received later than sooner, like the 5th century, because by that time there's not that much change, what the system has crystallized into, and what is that system, what are good and bad things as far as that system is concerned. But I want to stay away from the idea of the world of Homer.
Right. Okay. So let's talk about some of the responses that we had. I think one of the first questions that came up is this question about, well, it's hard to answer the question. Some people did have immediate responses, but they wanted to find out first, basically, how can we think about kingship? And I know that's a huge topic. So if we could, you're very good at condensing difficult arguments, Greg. Maybe you can help us think about this in just 2 minutes, 3 minutes.
Sure. And there were some respondents who thought that Agamemnon, as what I like to describe as overking, that Agamemnon as overking has absolute power. Well, he doesn't. And if the Achaeans, who are the fighting men that he technically leads, if they don't approve of something, then he's not going to get his way necessarily. And that's why it's very important for me to notice that when people figure out that Agamemnon has insulted the priest of Apollo and that he has to do something about it, and purify the polluted act. At that point, all the Achaeans to whom he leads express their approval.
Mm.
However, so that's what happens about what he intends to do to remedy the loigos, the devastation caused by the disease that Apollo sends upon the Achaeans. But then let's go to phase 2, when we're confronted with the second devastation suffered by the Achaeans, which is the string of military reversals that will result in the Achaeans being on the losing side and possibly even getting destroyed by the fire effector. In that case, the Achaeans never got around to saying, you know, we don't approve of the fact that you insulted Achilles. So they went along with that. And that shows that when Agamemnon gets into trouble, he could be sometimes regulated by his own people, because there is a kind of approval or disapproval of the assembly. And in the case I just mentioned, the assembly of warriors does approve undoing the insult to the priest, but never get around to approving the undoing of the insult to Achilles. And that is bad. Bad, I shouldn't say bad. It's disastrous for the Achaeans. Let's put it that way.
Right.
And yes, he has power. And one of the correspondents talked about the whims and the petty concerns of Agamemnon as the ruler that he is, the leader that he is.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree that there's a lot of that too, but he doesn't have absolute power in exercising these whims. There are going to be checks and balances. Mm-hmm. And in the end, he's really going to pay for it. One person noticed, and I was very proud of them, that at one point Agamemnon doesn't speak from a standing up position, but from a sitting down position. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's in Iliad 19, not in Iliad 1. So our participant was reading ahead, and I did have a passage that I quoted from Iliad 19 already in hour 1, but I was still very proud of the fact that this participant noticed such a detail, that there's something off about the leadership of Agamemnon, that he can't even stand up when he makes his final offer, when he formulates the bottom line for what the settlement will be. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, something off.
Yeah, and I agree. We are seeing evidence of a lot of careful reading. I mean, there are several places where people are giving citations, which is great, right? They're building their arguments upon the text itself.
As in this case, yeah, this person actually cited the passage from Iliad 19, I guess because they read carefully my analysis of that passage in Iliad 19 in my write-up for hour 1.
Yeah, I can't remember if this person cited Greg or if it was another person we were talking about.
Well, I might be mixing people up.
Yeah,
now.
I think there were several. We were talking about the citations, but you know, Greg, I'd like to just talk very, very briefly about another question that came up in the course of this early conversation in the thread. Someone raised the issue of basically, you know, what is it that might motivate leaders within this tradition, should we say, and one might motivate the more common soldiers. Yes. So that's not directly your question, but I was wondering if we could talk maybe just for a minute or two about that. I mean, is everyone motivated by kleos, regardless of, let's say, their social standing? Everyone wants to just get their half a line or a line in the Iliad?
Yes, I would think so, and it's not so much that there are people who are lower class and upper class. It's more that some people just get more attention than others. Frankly, most of the people who are named as fighters are already aristocratic, so you don't get singling out of the common soldier, so to speak.
Right.
Although sometimes there are references to infantry does this, and cavalry, by cavalry we mean chariot fighters do that. But once you focus on individual fighting, it's aristocrats.
Okay, and it's interesting to point out that anytime we see one of these names, you know, that one name, that one line can really be an expression of a very deep poetic tradition of its own about this hero, right? So even if we just have a mention of so and so, we can't assume that there may be someone who's less significant. They're just not mentioned as much in this context, right?
And you know, here's another thing. Yes, I agree. But another thing is that as far as the people who are listening to the Iliad, as far as the audience, if I can put it that way, of the Iliad are concerned, they're living in a post-heroic age. And supposedly in the post-heroic age, what is sort of 95% true of most people is that there are no kings anymore. Kings have been put out of business. Kings go back to an era of the heroic age when, yes, they were kings and they did some very questionable things. But when we get to reading Hesiod later on in our program, we'll see that as far as the present is concerned, and by present I mean the age after the age of heroes, which is the age when Homeric poetry displays the age of heroes. In that age, the only people who still have kings are the Spartans for all intents and purposes. And that's almost like the constitutional monarchy of the United Kingdom. It's kind of a leftover, just as the Spartans are practically the only adult males who still wear long hair. Everybody wears short hair now, even though the boys who fight for the Achaean cause are all long-haired. So,
and we'll get to that later in the project. We don't want to give that stuff away because it's so good when it comes.
I'm giving things away, but
yes, spoiler alert.
But the point is that that kingship is not something that people would identify as a model for how to behave in war.
Okay.
The model for how to behave in war really is all about how to die. That's what it's about.
Okay.
And that's
what heroes are going to help us learn, right?
Yes, exactly. And
okay.
And with all the flaws and warts of not just Agamemnon, but the other heroes who are all in one way or another kings.
Right. Okay. So just getting back to the thread and the comments and concerns that people mentioned, I just want to highlight again, this is something you already mentioned in your intro, that many of our community members did express concerns about the idea of attributing good or bad to a character within this context, right? Within which I think you appreciate.
Very much.
But one person I wanted to point out did point out that in addition to the fact that we have to be careful about attributing our own ideas, that he did feel that there was a sense that, can I just read this because it was so beautiful? Yeah. What is interesting, though, and more interesting for us is that the reverse seems to work better. There seems an awful lot that we can take from the works like the Iliad and peel away at and really find universal concerns that say something about where we are now. This is by Smidirin. So that's an interesting concept, right?
Very acute observation. I really like it. Very acute.
And sorry.
No, that's it.
Okay. I want to turn now to some of the comments we had about people who were trying to find something positive about Agamemnon. So, oh wait, actually first I want to say something else about something that people said negative. They said, well, maybe he wasn't totally a bad character, but we have a comment from Elizabeth Howell who's saying maybe a better way to think about him is that he's hasty. And she mentioned something that a few other people mentioned, which doesn't occur or is not mentioned in Iliad 1, but is still kind of interesting as we consider this character within his tradition. That is the sacrifice of his daughter, right? In order to get to Troy.
Well, but I don't want to be a spoiler here. When we get to the Agamemnon of Aeschylus, I will just talk about that. But in the Iliad, there is no direct reference to this sacrifice. And in fact, the only time the daughter of Agamemnon is mentioned is in Iliad 9, when Agamemnon offers Achilles the choice of one of his 3 daughters. As a father of a woman, I I thought, wow, that's pretty being a good sport or something, because fathers should be protective, right? And so, but it turns out it's not really a very nice gesture, because if Achilles marries the daughter of Agamemnon, any one of the three that Agamemnon offers, it means that he becomes a vassal to the overking, and has to treat Agamemnon with special respect as father-in-law. Not a good deal.
Right. Okay. And
to turn it down.
Yeah. Okay. So let's turn then to some of the things that people wanted to say about maybe something positive they could find. One of the things that they found was this sense that, well, when he's confronted by Achilles and they do find out that Apollo needs to be appeased, before he goes and says, great, let me go get the girl from Achilles, he stops and says, well, we do need to do this purification first, and says specifically that he doesn't want the people to die, he wants them to live. So in that sense, he does seem to get something.
It's too late. A lot of people have died already, so he learns the hard way. No, I don't think that's particularly admirable, because, my goodness, they're dying in droves from the plague, from the epidemic. And he finally gets it. Oh, I must be doing something wrong. Well, in that case, okay. And then he compounds the wrong by insulting somebody else. And it turns out that produces another kind of devastation. In this case, not an epidemic, but where all the Achaeans start losing. And they're going to lose in a big way. And lots of heroes on the Achaean side die who otherwise wouldn't have died. So in terms of whether he's acting well, he's just compounding one mistake by linking it to another mistake. So I'm not too impressed with his seeing the light, so to speak.
Okay.